Most people believe the corner office comes with a private life, a sanctuary walled off from the balance sheet. But they are wrong. Look back at the corporate wreckage of 2025. Historians will not dwell on interest rates or supply chains. They will combine a far greater failure, a synchronized collapse of basic impulse control at the highest level of global enterprise. Media outlets jokingly called it the summer of CEO love, but there was nothing romantic about it. Within months, a wave of high-profile chief executives steering multi-billion-dollar supertankers like Nestle, Kohl's, and Astronomer were outs from their corner offices. They were not removed for operational failure. Margins held, initiatives advanced, and momentum remained in key areas. They were liquidated because they fell victim to the mirror poison, the catastrophic delusion that their private life could be separated from their public role. Too many leaders treat their personal lives as off-the-books luxury. They assume that as long as they delivered the numbers on Tuesday morning, what they do on Saturday night is entirely irrelevant. This is a strategic miscalculation. Your personal life is not a sanctuary of absolute freedom. It is the single most volatile operational risk on your company's balance sheet. And when that risk defaults, the empire you spent decades building will dissolve in a matter of hours. To understand how brilliant operators engineer such destruction, we must bypass the surface-level tabloid gossip and perform a precise psychological autopsy of the executive ego. The decay is powered by two core defense mechanisms: moral licensing and compartmentalization. When a leader spends 80 hours a week navigating brutal corporate stress and making sacrifices ordinary people cannot fathom, their brain develops a dangerous distortion known as moral licensing. Consider a CEO who just closed a $200 million funding round. His brain runs the spreadsheet. I generated hundreds of millions for stakeholders. I preserved thousands of jobs. Therefore, I have earned surplus moral credit and the right to a private indulgence. This isn't philosophy. It's neurological accounting. The subconscious rebalances ethical debt like a financial sheet. It always credits itself more than it deserves. That entitlement is shielded by compartmentalization, where an executive constructs rigid walls within their mind. They convince themselves their CEO persona and private selves are entirely separate entities operating in parallel universes. A CEO who just closed a $200 million round feels entitled to an affair. His brain has already credited him the moral surplus. A leader will sign a draconian company-wide code of conduct in the morning and violate that same policy in the evening, genuinely believing the actions never intersect. But reality is not a multi-tenant building. It is an interconnected ecosystem. You are structurally compromising the load-bearing wall of your public empire. But here is what makes compartmentalization truly lethal. The brain doesn't just justify the private collapse. It physically rewires to accommodate it. The higher you climb, the more your environment reshapes your neurological architecture. Biologically, research shows that sustained power can blunt prefrontal cortex functions, governing self-regulation and empathy. Self-regulation is not an infinite trait. It is a finite resource, a moral muscle depleted by constant high-stake decisions. Executives make hundreds of critical calls daily, navigating board friction, negotiating hostile takeovers, and masking their true emotions to maintain market confidence. By 6 p.m., the leader is suffering from ego depletion. Their self-regulating muscle is exhausted. Simultaneously, the environment triggers disinhibition, surrounded by high-yield access, flattering egos, and yes-men who treat every word as gospel. The brain's threat detection system disengages. The executive stops registering social boundaries or consequences because, in their immediate universe, no one ever tells them no. This is where the guru-style entitlement I dismantled in my first video transforms into an operational hazard. Boundaries blur, and constraints feel like a downgrade rather than a virtue. Leaders mistake the isolation of wealth and position for invincibility, unaware that isolation has left them dangerously exposed to their own impulses. Three cases from 2025 illustrate how private lapses rapidly dismantled public empires. Andy Byron, former CEO of the data orchestration platform Astronomer, had built a reputation as a high-performance enterprise leader. Caught in a stadium kiss cam, Byron was exposed in a widely reported extramarital affair with his chief people officer. The fallout was instantaneous, and within days, he had to resign. At an elite level, privacy is impossible. One casual moment under the spotlight can instantly liquefy years of pristine corporate branding. Byron's evaporation was public, but some destructions are quieter. Lorraine Fresh at Nestle was not exposed by a viral clip, but by the governance apparatus he was meant to uphold. He reportedly engaged in an undisclosed romantic relationship with a direct subordinate despite multiple hotline tips, internal warnings, and a clear company code of conduct that mandated requiring self-reporting. When the board's investigation confirmed a breach, his tenure was terminated. As fiduciary embodiment of a global enterprise, a conflict of interest is not private. It's institutional sabotage. Just like Fresh, Ashley Buchanan's destruction was also silent, but it cut deeper because he didn't just mismanage his personal life. He weaponized company capital to sustain it. Buchanan's remarkably brief tenure at Kohl's illustrates exactly how a personal lapse mutates into a catastrophic failure of corporate governance. He routed lucrative corporate contacts directly to entities owned by his romantic partner without disclosure. The board's swift removal confirmed the rule that when personal liability bleeds onto corporate ledger, the market excises them to protect shareholder value. Average observers view the pinnacle of success as a realm of total freedom. They assume that greater capital and title grants immunity from ordinary rules. But the opposite is true. The higher you climb, the narrower your behavior latitude becomes. An ordinary employee can mismanage their private life, and the fallout remains localized to their living room. The market doesn't notice. But as the CEO, you have traded the luxury of a private identity for capital, leverage, and position. You are the fiduciary embodiment of the enterprise. Your reputation is no longer a personal asset. It is a corporate equity, either depreciated or appreciated by your conduct. Every stakeholder, from the board member to the junior intern, is tracking your alignment. A single lapse in the dark signals to the entire organization that optics matter more than substance. You initiate an internal culture rot that no talent retention program or branding campaign can repair. We have spent time dissecting the psychology of the individual on this stage, but we must look at the people sitting in the front row who allowed this rot to fester. The corporate board of directors. Scandals rarely arrive as surprises. The board almost always knows. The inner circle hears the whispers. Hotline tips surface months or years in advance. But the boardroom is often populated by yes men and high-price echoes that I exposed in my previous autopsies. They practice institutional enablement. As long as the quarterly reports remain pristine, directors dismiss boundary violations as eccentricities or demanding leadership. They prioritize short-term stock performance over long-term structural integrity. This is a fatal compromise. By protecting the leader's ego instead of reinforcing governance, boards guarantee that when a scandal erupts, the cliff is steeper, the cost is higher, and the shareholder destruction is total. Here's the final verdict of the mirror. True excellence requires integrated accountability that refuses to compromise with a comfortable lie. To protect the empire you have built, abandon the delusion of compartmentalization. Stop believing that your success grants you a license for private decay. You must accept the reality that the higher you climb, the more absolute your discipline must become. Survive the pressure at the top by deploying rigorous pre-commitment devices. Maintain an independent circle outside your corporate echo chamber. Individuals unbounded by your title or wealth and with explicit authority to confront blind spots before they reach the market. Audit your private conduct with the same forensic precision rigor you apply to operational compliance. Any action or relationship that cannot withstand public scrutiny is an operational liability and must be liquidated immediately. The pedestal offers no immunity to economic gravity. Real strategy demands the courage to examine your own architecture, acknowledge vulnerabilities, and construct a life of unyielding steel. The modern boardroom worships optics, but gravity does not care about your press coverage. It only cares about structural integrity. And when private meets public exposure, the market does not negotiate, it liquidates. In my next video, I will go into even more treacherous territory: why empathetic leaders fail. I will dissect how weaponization of empathy has become a destructive distraction that is crippling the modern boardrooms. Because the most dangerous leader is not the one who feels nothing, it's the one who feels everything and lets it steer the ship. I will see you then.